Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
G'day and welcome to a noisy edition of Thrash and Treasure, the Torture Chamber musical comedy podcast that will only plead guilty to bullying the jukebox if fuckwitted of our crimes against comedy. And speaking of fuckwitted, I'm Aaron, and I'm joined as usual by, oh shit, sorry. Hang on a second. My co-host. Oh, that's right. Evan, hi, nice to meet you.
Hi.
How you doing? Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if that was a bit or not.
It was a total bit.
Okay.
It says here, shit, wait, sorry, damn it, where, Evan, my co-host, and it was meant to be awkward. Hello, nice to meet you. So anyways, guess what?
What?
We have another tech diva in the sound booth today, and between Evan, the super nerd, and this mix master, help. So let me introduce to you a multi-award-winning sound designer whose electrifying career and can-do attitude prove that, oh, no matter the onomatopoeia, he's the Axel Foley of the sound desk set, because we've copped an earful of his arresting oral arrangements, such as putting the in Carousel, the bippity-boppity Borboringus in Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella, as well as a tweet tweet in La Cage aux Folles, uncaging a stellar career which has weighed down his shelves with multiple award wins at the Olivier's, Tony's, Outer Critics Circle, Helen Hayes Awards, and more. I mean, he's literally up to his ears in auricular accolades. And luckily for us, this cacophonous creative has marched to the beat of his own eardrum by sending in the sound along with the clowns for a little night music, plus adding a zzz or two to Young Frankenstein, Little Shop of Horrors, plus the present day nostalgic hit Back to the Future, which is timely since he's gone from brum brum of the DeLorean to the toot toot for Germany's stationary production of Starlight Express to the nyeh of 39 planes which came from away. And whilst travelling via planes, trains, and automobiles, he's journeyed up 42nd Street, merrily rolled along to Memphis, where he soared in the heights, passing over a fiddler on the roof, where this auditive auteur breezed on by to put the wind in the willows. And I, for one, tip my top hat to him. So please give your warmest, most Aussiest amplified g'day and a sound wave to this highly decorated audio guru whose otic offerings oscillate 1,000 times over every week in major theatres worldwide, where you can hear his boing from the Spring Awakening and the music of MJ, Summer, Bat Out of Hell, Let It Be, Mamma Mia the Party, and Juliet, plus the totally culturally appropriate sounds of Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and the Prince of Egypt, plus a bunch more, but I'm running out of paper and breath. So please welcome to the Torture Chamber this technical wizard, a leader, an entrepreneur, Mr. Gareth Owen. How are you going? Welcome to the Torture Chamber.
I'm sorry, I wasn't recording that. Can we do another take?
I told you it was the silliest one I have written so far.
It's seriously impressive. You need to remember to breathe, but it was great.
Yes, I was breathing along the way. I do that singer's thing of when you're breathing not in the middle of a sentence, which is when normal people breathe. I noticed that from editing this podcast. Performers, we take breaths whenever we get them in. So, yes.
That oscillating singing thing where you breathe on the in as well as the out.
Yes.
There's a fabulous Jack Black sketch in one of Jack Black's Tenacious D albums where he's demonstrating. He's obviously not particularly good at it, but it's a funny sketch.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I do like my Jack Black, as we will find out next week. We were talking about School of Rock with Glenn Slater. Spoiler alert for everybody. So
the Tenacious D drive-through sketch is absolutely hilarious.
Is it? I must check it out. Evan, you should know these ones.
No, not off the top of my head. No. I've seen them live, but not like I haven't devoured everything they've done. No, not yet.
I would love to devour everything Jack Black does.
But Evan's got 3 wonders on his arcade machine, so he's in my book he's pretty much infallible at this point.
Yeah, for the listeners at home, our guest today is the first time that a guest has requested a background on the arcade game, which I think we're actually going to mention next week. I think. Actually, no, it's our Christmas episode with Chris Sarandon. Yeah, we have Jack Skellington, and the game will be Nightmare Before Christmas.
That was an easy one. There was actually a game for it. Yeah,
that was a perfect one. Yes, but anyways, now you're currently you're in Tech Week for MJ the Musical.
Tech Week. It's more like Tech Year. It's about 5 weeks of tech, and then we've got something like 71 previews. But this is also a show that we've been workshopping and playing around with. I mean, it's easily I've easily been doing workshops for it for 5-6 years. I mean, obviously, there's an 18-month, 2-year break in the middle with COVID ballsing everything up. But I mean, years and years and years we've been doing workshops. I think I've done 4 or 5 workshops, and every time it's been with full sound and full band, and everyone in microphones. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, this gig.
Goodness me. Now, okay, let's pretend we're in another dimension and you're a rock star. What crazy stuff would be in your celebrity rider?
Celebrity rider, it would be Diet Coke, because I can't start the day without Diet Coke, let alone go on stage and rock out. I save the proper Coke for a special occasion. Usually out the mini bar in a hotel in Spain. What would be in my crazy rider? Earplugs. Because I actually, it will surprise people to know that I actually don't particularly like loud noise. I mean, I've made a career out of making a lot of loud noise, but I really, really enjoy shutting myself off from that loud noise when I don't have to. So I'd have earplugs, Diet Coke, and probably the Formula One on TV in the dressing room, if we were even remotely close to any sort of race, practice, qualifying, anything like that.
Yes. Now, can you actually remember how many shows you have teched in the past 4 months across multiple countries?
Oh, I'm sure I could sit down and work it out, but I think you'd be bored, and so would I. What I do know is that I have a 3rd child that's been born.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Not only have I been zooming all over the world trying to get theatre reopened, but I've also been trying not to fall out with my wife about the lack of attendance at home for dirty nappies, late nights, and bad sleeping habits.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, thank you very, very much for giving up your time to come on our trashy little show. I really do appreciate it, because you, as I said before, you have had a remarkable career. I could not believe it looking through.
It's definitely time to put my prices up. I mean, I think clearly I'm not charging enough, because people keep asking me to do shows. So I think that's just, if I doubled my prices, maybe half the number of people would ask, and I could stay at home more. I'm seriously thinking it might not be the worst idea.
Yeah, no, why not? Know your worth, as they say out there. We'll move on to the metal. So have you had much experience with heavy metal? I know you mentioned Tenacious D in their parodic way.
It's interesting. I would hate to get into a debate with Evan about this, but I'm actually quite a big metal fan, but probably not heavy metal. The original definition of metal being people like Cinderella, Rat, Skid Row, Quiet Riot, people like that. What would be the sort of fullbreaks of Guns N' Roses, which was who I picked today. Then when we sort of move to heavy metal, I'm sort of less of a fan, although back in my rock and roll days, I did mix the orchestra for a lot of the Metallica live concerts that they did with big orchestras.
Oh, wow. Oh, and that's why you suggested that originally, but we'd already done it.
I did.
Oh, now I feel like a dickwad. We could have done the 2nd album.
I've been robbed. Yeah.
You have. No, we've been robbed. We've been robbed of that insight. So, anyway.
Well, Big Mick, who mixes Metallica, and he and I have known each other for years. And I used to do. I obviously started out in rock and roll, pre-musical theatre. Like I said, obviously, why would anyone that's listening to this know that? But I did. Which makes me relatively unique in musical theatre sound design, in that a lot of musical theatre sound designers sort of start off doing plays and kind of work their way up, and then they get asked to do a small musical, and then one day they wake up and they're doing musicals. Whereas I started off right at the bottom of rock and roll, doing all the shit jobs, pulling heavy cables through the mud in festivals, and loading trucks at 5 o'clock in the morning. Relentless. And I kind of worked my way up through that. Ended up mixing some pretty big bands, but then I sidestepped. So I sidestepped straight from that, straight into being a head of sound on West End musicals. And so I never, everyone sort of talks about, I came out of nowhere, which I sort of did in theatre land. But in rock and roll land, no, I did almost years of work experience to prove that I was worth, I was worth it on the road, and that I could keep up with everybody on the tour bus.
Certainly, all the bands that you've named is everything I grew up on. That's metal as far as I'm concerned.
But is it metal? Or is it because these days it's kind of referred to as hair rock.
Yeah, glam.
And it's kind of referred to in a slightly derogatory kind of way.
Yeah.
Look, I watch Drag Race religiously, so I don't see it as derogatory because I call it gay myself.
In the early to mid 80s, that was metal. That was as metal as it got. So
yeah.
No, I wouldn't say it wasn't. Just because we now scream a lot louder,
angrier, doesn't
denigrate what came before.
Angrier.
It also, as a genre, it was sort of made uncool by, sort of the arrival of Nirvana kind of kicked that whole genre out of the charts, straight into the gutter. It was people like James Hetfield from Metallica. I think it's the Nothing Else Matters video where there's where he's throwing a dart at a dartboard, and on the dartboard there's a picture of one of these classic, what would now be referred to as hair rock. There's a band called Nelson, and there's a picture of one of them on the dartboard, and he's throwing darts at this picture of Nelson. And then, in fact, actually, Nelson was also the punchline in a Beavis and Butthead sketch from MTV. And Beavis and Butthead, there was a kid, I can't remember his name, but there was a kid in Beavis and Butthead that Beavis and Butthead were always picking on because he was considered to be like a complete douchebag. And he always wore a Nelson t-shirt, and it was sort of like that. It really became very, very cool to kind of kick what would now be referred to as hair rock, and a lot of bands didn't survive it. I mean, we're talking about Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses were imploding themselves at that point anyway, so they took, they sort of disappeared off the scene, but a whole load of bands kind of disappeared, and the sort of only the extremely big mega bands like Bon Jovi made it through, and even Bon Jovi had a rough few years.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, Evan, you would not refer to Bon Jovi as heavy metal, and probably not even metal either.
Or listenable, for that matter.
No. That's Bon Jovi's rock.
Bon Jovi's all right when you're drunk.
Radio-friendly rock.
I'm actually quite a big Bon Jovi fan because I spent quite a lot of time. It was my... It was very much a soundtrack of my youth. I remember, everyone has their bands that they remember sitting around campfires listening to, when they were kids. But these days, I actually hang out with them quite a lot because you mentioned both Memphis and night before last, we opened Diana on Broadway, which obviously, if you read musical theatre reviews, you will probably have read quite a lot about. But that was written by David Bryan from Bon Jovi.
And there you go.
He did all the music for it. And
oh, wow. I apologize then. It's my job to be a sassy bitch on this show. It's done with love. I promise. It is. It's done with love.
It's absolutely not a problem. But It does mean that 2 nights ago, I was in David Bryan's hotel room with John Bon Jovi and Tico and drinking, stuff out of a bottle, which I'm still slightly hungover, which is why I'm here.
Yep. And now you're on this podcast. How far we fall, Gareth. Anyways, I'm going to quickly run through my review because we've done, as you mentioned, Guns N' Roses, the live album, which to the regular listeners out there, I've said live album, which means, yes, there is an audience. So we'll get to that. And the only reason why I accepted that is because you do what you do, Gareth. If anyone else had mentioned it, any actor, director, choreographer, anyone, I would have said no. But if a sound designer or someone who actually knows what we're going to be talking about, that's all right. I'll put up with it for this reason. But I'm not a fan of live.
That is purely your issue, and I've been meaning to bring up that without a freaking crowd, you don't have a show. Period.
That's not true. They can
I'd
film.
like to see an empty musical theatre show continue for more than a couple of nights.
Well, no, that doesn't mean they can't film it and it forever be there for prosperity. Thank you very much. He who complains about the lack of pro shots. Anyways, I am going to run through my review before we bicker like a married couple. When I first saw the cover, I couldn't bring myself to judge it, nor make a joke. I mean, we all remember the spaghetti incident, don't we? Anyway, Guns N' Roses are as old as I am. As a band, just an observation. They were masters of the game with only 6 albums in 23 years. but their output exceeded genres and audience expectations until that spaghetti incident. So having grown up with Guns N' Roses, it wouldn't be fair to score them as they haven't suffered from or caused us to suffer through 10 more mediocre albums of the same sound. November Rain, Paradise City, You Could Be Mine, they're all classics that now reside in the stratosphere, even higher than Metallica's most popular output. And to hear Axl Rose stop a show in London because people were getting hurt whilst at the height of their popularity and egos shows why they belong there. But as far as this being a live album, it's clear to me that audiences around the world scream the same language. Fucking annoying. 4.5 stars. So yeah, no, they picked all the best songs for this. They played them well. He sung brilliantly in every one. His voice is remarkable.
You know what's completely remarkable? About 2 years ago, me and my wife went to see Guns N' Roses with Slash, because obviously Slash disappeared for a while. Went to see Guns N' Roses at Gofford Park in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
And their tour set was that live album.
Nice.
It was basically that live album, in almost exactly the same songs in exactly the same order, even with pretty much the same introductions. And what was absolutely remarkable about it is that it was just as good as that live album is. I was absolutely blown away. You would think the amount of heroin these guys did, you'd expect Axl's voice to be absolutely screwed. I mean, in the way that so many of the big rock stars, you know, the singers, the voices are an absolute mess. And you know what? He absolutely nailed it. And it was so good. As a sound engineer, I'm standing there going, okay, I know a lot of tricks when it comes to making people look like they're singing live and they're not. And I began to, I was actually for a while really studying it. Going, is this tracked? Is it recorded? Is there a backing track here? Is there? And I was like, no, they're not. And
No.
I'm really surprised that their current live performance is really very, very nearly as good as that album. That's, what would you say it was, 87 to 93?
Yeah.
Really impressive, especially since the band completely imploded in the early 90s as a result of everyone being absolutely off it, you know, taking it to extremes and ending up in rehab.
They're having too much spaghetti, apparently. Isn't that what the spaghetti incident was? I don't know. I was only 8 at the time. I was too young and naive to know.
I don't think I know what the spaghetti incident is.
It's a bunch of covers, basically.
They're all punk covers, so that's why I gave it shit.
Yeah, it wasn't original lineup. You know, they'd already started losing members and chopping and changing, and at that point,
it was critically acclaimed. Like, it got good reviews.
Yeah.
But the fans didn't like it. Like, my brother and sister hated it. They denounced it. So I never really heard it much growing up.
Well, the fans just wanted the original lineup all back again, which they've nearly got again now. It's not far off. But yeah, this period of, I'm actually amazed that this even got recorded in the first place, considering how they toured and how they used to, you know, they were like herding cats. These guys were just shocking.
Herding or hurting?
Herding cats. You know that, surely. You know the term, herding.
Is that a Perth thing?
No, it's definitely not a Perth thing. I've heard of herding cats.
Go get a bunch of cats and then try to herd them into a pen and see what happens. That's Guns N' Roses. They were either drunk, high, or both. 24/7. They were just an absolute shambles of a group of people, but somehow they would all, you know, get them into a room together, and they would put out, you know, songs like this. I'm amazed that it happened.
Yeah,
it's Axl's ability to wail. I mean, it just has this ability to just, I mean, a voice that is, well, certainly at the time was unique. And, you know, when it comes to Slash, yes, there were arguably other guitarists the same caliber around at the same time, but nobody could sling it together in the way that he could. Plus, you know, back then, stage persona, I suppose it's now as well, but, you know, these guys looked fabulous for the time as well. It was all about having a good-looking lead singer and a lead guitarist who could come down the front and absolutely shred the stage, and, you know, a drummer who looked good with their top off, and there were whole bands like Poison, for example, who just made a whole living out of looking really good on stage. No one, including Poison themselves, would have said that Poison weren't good musicians, but they looked great, and that was what mattered. It was a major factor of what mattered back then. Well,
I mean, Axl Rose is regarded as one of the greatest frontmen of all time. He reminds me a lot of Bruce Dickinson, the way he commands the stage.
Is that Judas Priest?
No, Iron Maiden.
I'll get it right one day.
He's just got that way of owning the whole place. Doesn't matter how big it is. It's all his.
Yeah.
But you said the magic word, shirtless drummer. I like that.
It's drummer. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Axel, and I think that's why I've always liked him, because his vocals are killer and he can hold a note. He can hold a good, strong note for a long time.
Unless they and their sound engineers are good enough at miming to fool me, he can still do it. That is absolutely incredible. I mean, I don't know how they're still walking, let alone able to perform like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Slash did sort of die for a few minutes there at one point. You know, he was found in a hotel with no pulse. Stephen Adler, you know, he got fired when they were trying to do track the drums for Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. He was just so messed up he couldn't play the drums anymore, and they had to replace him. You know, these guys were right on the edge 24/7 and would somehow get up and put out this live album. You know, it's recorded in multiple cities over multiple years, and I'd swear it was the same show. It's so well done.
Yeah, the blending of that annoying crowd, which just sounds like seagulls down at the beach, and you throw a chip to one of them and 1,000 come. No, Adler rocked up on Sober House, is it? With Dr. Drew, that reality show with celebrity drug addicts, and then there was Clean House afterwards or whatever. He was on both of them.
Is that before or after Drag Race in the evening schedule?
I don't know. I only read it on Wikipedia, so it must be correct if it's on Wikipedia.
Poor old Adler, he actually had a cocaine-induced stroke that he survived, but he did say he was actively trying to kill himself with drugs, and yeah, very nearly did.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common.
There's a fabulous documentary set back then. The director was Penelope something.
Spheris.
That's the one.
Penelope Spheris. She directed Wayne's World and The Little Rascals.
Did she?
The Little Rascals.
Sorry. I'm a bit of a fan. I really want her on this show. Yeah, she went from directing Wayne's World to The Little Rascals.
I had no idea she did Wayne's World.
Yeah.
Wayne's World was brilliant.
And Wayne's World too, yes.
Hey, Mr. Donut Man, who's trying to kill you? Don't know, but you better not. I mean, come on. Does it get any better than that? No, Penelope Spheris directed a series called Rise and Fall of The Fall of Western Civilization. It was a 3-parter. The first part was punk, and the second part was metal. And some of the stories in that, they've got people like Steven Tyler and Ozzy Osbourne and all this kind of stuff in it. And some of the stories they tell about drinking drugs. And I mean, there's this fabulous moment in it where she's filming Ozzy making breakfast, and he's talking about all the drugs he did. And he goes, "Yeah, but you know, these days I'm totally cool." And then there's this that he pours the orange juice, and he misses the glass, and it goes all over the table, and then she admitted, like years later, that he and her both said actually it was staged. He didn't even pour the orange juice. It was just But yes, it's all about a lot of it is about the amount of women they slept with and the amount of drugs they took. I mean, again, the soundtrack to Wayne. You know, we could talk about Wayne's World. The soundtrack to Wayne's World. Some of the stuff on that's absolutely fabulous. I mean, they were responsible for reintroducing a whole new generation to Bohemian Rhapsody. I'd never heard Bohemian Rhapsody until I saw Wayne and Garth and his friends, rapping along to it in the Mirthmobile.
And at the fight for it too, the studio said no, that's not familiar enough, but they fought for it.
And Wayne's World again bringing us reviving Ballroom Blitz as well.
Yes, what a great song!
Yes, by Sweet. Is it Sweet?
Yeah.
Wow. How do I remember that? I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah. And it was only a portion of it. I think it was in a montage of like a chase scene, or they're traveling somewhere.
No, it was like the whole ending scene.
Yeah, didn't they do it as the closing song that
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
she performed on their TV show or something like that?
And they changed the satellite to get the guy in the limousine, the record producer.
That's right.
Yeah. Now we've become the Wayne's World Appreciation Society, which is no problem with me.
No problem here either.
But I think we all agree though that Guns N' Roses are one of the epitome of rock bands out there in terms of output. You put on Paradise City at a party, everyone's singing along.
I mean, that's the thing. You're looking at this going, these are all hits, but they're not all singles.
No.
You look at Appetite for Destruction, and there's really only 1 or 2 songs that weren't hits. I'd love chucking this on and knowing every word to every song and listening to it over and over. Even though I didn't have to, I was chucking it back on. They were just that damn good.
They were.
You know, you could have done another one, you know, and filled another album with just as many hits. They're incredible, and considering how messed up they were constantly.
Yeah.
Now, I did notice after the second track, they left in the comment about the crowd up the front getting smashed.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that in my review.
Yeah, I just found that was rather poignant, you know, considering recent events, because they did have 2 people die.
With Astro World and everything that's happened in the last few weeks, yeah, it does seem very poignant. The fact that they were self-aware enough or aware enough of their surroundings to realise what was going on. And also, I always found the idea truly fascinating that you could get a crowd to take one step back. I always thought, you know, every concert I've ever been at, did anyone do that? But clearly it worked. I also, and that whole moment as well, I'm also feeling really sorry for the lighting designer who clearly doesn't have control of the house lights and is clearly screaming at somebody down a walkie-talkie going, Axel wants the house lights on. Who the fuck's got control of the house lights? I don't have control of the house lights. Axel wants the house lights on. You know, I was always like feeling really sorry for that guy, you know, who's getting screamed at from the stage. You know, hey, Phil, turn on the lights. It's like, oh, shit, this is awkward. But yeah, I think it's quite remarkable that he had the appreciation of his surroundings, but also that he knew he could get the audience to do it. And had the wherewithal to go, I can get the audience to do this, and I can make life better for people, especially since they were probably off their head at the time.
Yeah, and not continue until they did it too, because he wanted them to be safe and have a good time. Like you made a point of that. It was quite a poignant moment after recent events.
In '88, in Donington, 2 people did die in their crowd, which would have been part of this tour. You know, there would have been songs. I've had to double check, but yeah, there's songs from Donington. So yeah, to leave that comment in about the people up the front getting smashed and trying to get the crowd to step back when they themselves have had 2 people die in their own crowds. They didn't learn about that until after the show.
What was I said about the M&Ms thing, the brown M&Ms? It's for the safety of everyone there. That's why that was done, to make sure shit like that doesn't happen. That stages are built properly, that crowds are kept safe. So, but anyways, no, I think the guns have run out of bullets, and we'll chuck to a quick ad break. We're back in a moment with Thrash and Treasure.
Coming this summer, winter, spring, or fall, the first ever musical theater sitcom, where you go behind the scenes of the latest West End show, the Fosse Forest Ballet.
Where's the important stuff? Aha! £1,000 a week ensemble rate. That's what Mamma Mia likes.
Starring Philip Joel and a West End cast featuring Carrie Ellis, Darren Day, Louise Demon, and Oliver Saville, and more.
It all started in 1987 when I was a jobbing actress working in a diner.
Yeah, it's just I had a really bad experience when I was touring Australia with a wombat.
Darling! Mwah, mwah.
La, la.
How long have I been mentoring you? 3 months?
2 years.
So her name is Henrietta.
The horse. Yes. I've managed to secure you an audition for the biggest, most innovative, and the latest show to be going into the West End. Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat. Think more along the lines of Panther.
Frozen.
You can watch this episode for the price of a coffee. Simply go to www.thefosseforestballet.com. Any and all profits go back to theatre charities, acting for others, and the theatre's trust. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you'll see a grown man in sparkly tights.
Tight nights. Nice. Tights.
Alrighty, you're listening to Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Evan, and we are joined by another Gareth. Goodness gracious me, we haven't had a Gareth on this show for about 6 months, and now there's a Gareth and an Evan on this show, so if I call either one of you the opposite, I apologize. That's because my former co-host was named Gareth as well, and it's Evan's brother.
Yeah, my older brother is a Gareth.
Yes, and I know 6 of them in my life.
It's obviously a more popular name in Australia than it is in the United States, because in the United States, everyone assumes I'm actually called Garth and I have a speech impediment. and in the Netherlands, where I actually live in Amsterdam.
Oh wow!
Nobody's heard. I mean, absolutely nobody's heard of the name Gareth. Although, interestingly, I was in a shop in Starbucks or something, and I said my name to the girl behind the counter, and she said, "Oh, you've got the same name as my favourite character in." And then she said some big online computer game that I've temporarily forgotten. And then I looked it up, and apparently he's like a famous knight in a big online computer game. So yeah, maybe the name's going to become a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think it is quite common in Australia, but I'm trying to think of, now that you say that, any famous American or British Gareth, like actor or anything. Gareth Thomas, the rugby player. Gareth Gates. Okay, there's a few in UK.
And there was Gareth Gascoigne, who was known as Gazza, who was a quite famous footballer. I only know this because, of course, I've Googled myself to see who comes up before I do. So I know exactly how many famous Gareths there are on Google.
Yeah, we've all Googled ourselves, Gareth, we were once teenagers. Anyways, moving on. I'm still waiting for Spider-Man to swing past the window because that building, the whatever building.
Yeah, and it is CGI'd into many New York Spider-Man type movies.
Mm-hmm. And usually when they're filmed in Canada or Australia. So anyways, as I mentioned / bragged about in your introduction, your work has been recognized remarkably by your peers many times. Have you weighed them all at once? Because I'm really curious to see how many of me they would weigh. My prediction is 2.5 of me.
I've never weighed them, but I do have an aspiration to get a 4th Olivier Award, because then I think they would make 4 nice legs for a coffee table. I mean, also, people are always really, self-depreciating when it comes to awards. Oh, yes, I just keep mine in the bathroom, on top of the toilet. And I'm like, absolutely not. Fuck that. I've got like a platform with spotlights, and it plays music when you come near it, and I'm like, ta-da! But only in my own office, so I'm the only person who ever sees them. But still, I'm like, ta-da!
Why not? Like, that's look, it's peer recognition. It's people who do the same thing as you do that admire your work. That, I think, to me, that means a lot more than the fans voting in their People Choice Awards.
I'm very much in agreement with that. I mean, it's not, when somebody comes up to me in theatre or at a party or something and says, oh, I really like the sound. If it's then followed by, I'm a sound engineer and I really like the sound, or, I'm a musician and I really like the sound, it's immediately gives it more weight than my mum telling me she liked the sound. Because you kind of, to be recognised for doing a good job by people who understand what it is you do, as opposed to just seeing a big mixing desk with lots of flashy lights and thinking it must be very clever. Those kind of awards mean a lot more.
Right.
Not that every award doesn't mean a lot. Thank you very much, everybody who gave me an award. Don't want to.
No, but look, it's the fact there are 2 different types of awards. There are peer voted and there are fan voted, and why not dissect the difference? If people are going to have a problem with that, don't listen to this podcast, because you're going to have a problem with literally everything that I say. Anyways, now, okay, we'll move on to the musical, because this week we gave me 3 options and I chose Bring It On because I'm not too familiar with it myself. So I thought this would be a learning experience for me too.
I also thought it would be fun to pick musicals that I haven't done.
Yeah, so I didn't see it on your bloody mile-long resume. And because it's so long, I didn't know if I was just missing it in that long list or if it just wasn't there. So now I have an answer, finally. It's not there. But Evan, you tumbled into this.
I tumbled into this, yeah. Well, for a change, I didn't have to watch the movie as well because I'd already seen it many times.
Oh, good. I love the movie.
Yeah, stepdaughter was obsessed by this when it came out. So yeah, I've seen it many times. But from what I gathered, they didn't follow the story too closely.
No.
They really took it somewhere else. Because I was surprised that I listened through and I'm like, there's no spirit fingers. What's going on? Because that's not part of this show. They haven't done that story. So yeah, I think this is the first Lin-Manuel Miranda that I've had to listen to.
Yes, it's the first time we've covered on this show.
Other than, Hamilton that everyone's heard. Yeah, there's some real... Okay, the first listen through it was like, oh my God, this is terrible.
It's all right, I'm not alone in that then.
Yeah, no, and it gets better the more you listen to it. Yeah, you pick apart the lyrics and you start hearing the comedy in it and the cleverness in it. It's All Happening is a really great standout track where that's very... I'll just say LMM influenced lyrics, rapping.
Oh, Lin-Manuel Miranda. Okay, yeah. You think you're cool now, do you, Evan?
Yes.
Yep. All right, go on.
Yeah, I can abbreviate him now. Yeah, we're in the know. Yeah, It's All Happening. That was a really standout song. I quite liked that. Killer Instinct was another one. That was funny as hell. It's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I did look for some track I looked for, there's no pro shot as usual. I saw some clips, but there's so many school productions of it. I found it hard to sort of differentiate which was the official, what was a actual clip of the actual show or not. It seemed like the staging was really sparse, and I assume that was just because they needed to move around. So yeah, they staged half of this with actual cheerleaders in conjunction with Varsity Spirit, the company, who pretty much run cheerleading in general. This again, I was really impressed with it. It's funny, it's clever, it's well sung. I'd like to see it staged and see the whole thing, but no. From instantly disliking it, the more I listened to it, the more I liked it. I think it was good. It's great.
So there is hope for Sunday in the Park with George yet. So why did you choose this one, Gareth? Because I was actually surprised when I realized it wasn't on your resume, and that I thought you must be a Lin-Manuel fan.
Well, look, at the risk of stating the obvious, how can you not be a Lin-Manuel fan? And don't tell me you're not, Aaron, because I'm sorry.
He blocked me on Twitter, so I'm not a fan of that.
Oh, what did you say?
I think I said I didn't enjoy Hamilton.
Well, okay.
But I didn't say it to him. I just tweeted it out to my friends.
Well, and everyone's entitled to opinion, and you certainly shouldn't be blocked for that. But the thing about Lin-Manuel is I would really like to be, I wasn't the sound designer for Hamilton, and, who wouldn't want to be the sound designer for Hamilton? The royalties alone will set you up for the rest of your life. But the nasty bitchy part of me really didn't want to spotlight. I think it's overrated. I just don't like it. But the reality of it is, I think it's freaking genius, and I think In the Heights is freaking genius as well, frankly. And it would bring it on, although he didn't do it all. It's not a Lin-Manuel. It's often billed as a Lin-Manuel musical because that's going to get people through the door. He did some of it. He did some of the lyrics and some of the songs. And what is very apparent is, although I don't dislike the songs that he didn't do, it is very, you can absolutely hear his influence in it. It's like listening, if you're a Jonathan Larson fan, as Aaron, I can see the man poster on the wall, you can listen to Tick Tick Boom and you can hear everything, all the ideas germinating there. You can hear the snappiness of the lyrics, and you're like, okay, you could definitely see the genesis of what then went on to be In the Heights and Hamilton, and I find that quite fascinating. Likewise, Tick Tick Boom. Obviously, it's about to become, if it hasn't already, it's about to become right in the forefront again because of the new movie that's coming out. But Tick Tick Boom was a sort of little known. Nobody knew what Tick Tick Boom was, but yet you listen to Tick Tick Boom, and you can actually imagine the staging. You can hear almost the first rent line before the rent line was a thing. Do you know what I mean? It's you can hear what the staging would have been in, and it was So, but plus I also remember seeing Bring It On Broadway, and it's interesting. Evan, you mentioned about the set and the scenery. I actually can't remember anything about the set and the scenery. I think you're right. I think it must have been quite an empty stage.
It is.
What I do remember is these girls and boys flying through the air, And I mean, I think they sort of had a musical theatre cast, and then they had a cheerleading cast and a cheerleading, and they were two almost completely separate entities. And yes, the musical theatre cast could busk their way through some cheerleading routines, absolutely passively. But when it came to the absolute genius, flying through the air, triple spins, what is basically gymnastics, I think that was obviously not the musical theatre cast. And gymnasts weren't expected to sing or really act, and the musical theatre cast were not expected to backflip 7 times through the air while cartwheeling and looking cool doing it. And yeah, I remember just generally being impressed with it, and also thinking, I'm surprised it didn't become a bigger hit than it was. I imagine it would have been ferociously expensive, because as you say, you've effectively got 2 casts.
That insurance for your cast, especially in a post-Spider-Man world.
Yeah, well, see, I was wondering about in terms of the staging, if it traveled much, because I know it's done a few different productions, a few different countries. Cheerleaders have a springy floor. It's literally, a sandwich of plywood with springs in the middle, and they lay that out across, the gymnasium or wherever for competitions. They have a springy floor. I assume they would have done that for the stage show as well. I hope, at that stage, by being dropped. Yeah, so I was just wondering if they bothered to do that, but I don't know.
I mean, a sprung floor is not an uncommon thing in musical theatre. A floor with give in it, and also pretty much every show on Broadway at the West End has a show deck as such, because most shows have tracks and automation built into them. So you always end up with a sort of 9-inch, 6-inch to 9-inch show deck, because there's automation and chains and all kinds of stuff going on, dragging through them, and tracks and pull tables and chairs and bits of sound and off. So yes, you're right. There would have been a cost implication to having the floor, but that doesn't make it prohibitive in relation to any other big musical. But you're right, cheerleading is a very, very American thing. It's a fundamental part of American life, and certainly in the United Kingdom, it's not a thing.
We have them here in the rugby.
It's also not a sport.
It is.
No.
It is. It is.
No, the IOC has recognised it as an Olympic sport, but it is still not a sport in terms of...
Oh, you sexist pig. Anyways.
No, this is not me. This is varsity cheer, because if varsity cheer run cheerleading.
So if varsity cheer jump off a bridge, are you going to follow them? Who cares what they say? What do you think? What's in your heart, Evan? Is cheerleading a sport?
I didn't get to finish my sentence, so
okay.
You don't know.
All right, go. Go and finish it.
All right, varsity cheer run cheerleading. They're a $2 billion a year company. If cheerleading was ever declared a sport, they will lose control of cheerleading. Basically, they sell all the uniforms, all the equipment and everything. They've copyrighted their own rules. So you can't even start another cheerleading company. They're currently being sued.
Good.
Under antitrust and even RICO laws over being a monopoly.
Yeah, that's bollocks.
Yeah, and if it was labeled a sport in the US under Title IX, it would then be regulated by the states. You would only have one state competition. At the moment, nationally, there's about 66 different competitions. Nationals is not just nationals. There's about 60 nationals. They run it like a beauty pageant, where it's just over and over and over, and another competition, another competition.
Yeah.
There's fees, there's the uniforms, everything all has to be done through varsity. It used to be shown on ESPN. It's now, they've taken it off ESPN. You have to watch it through Varsity's app, which is $30 a month.
Jesus Christ.
To watch your own kids do cheerleading. These guys own everything.
Opulence.
And if it was a sport, like I said, it would be regulated by the states. It would also have safety requirements, which they don't have at the moment.
Yeah. Money's more important than the safety.
Medical staff at the moment don't have to be
Trained.
qualified medical staff. They could just be coaches. They can just be parents. There's no rules. There's no laws around it because it's officially not a sport, and they have no intention of it being a sport because they'll lose control of it.
Not too bad.
And as a consequence, about 30,000 teenagers a year are injured, catastrophically injured, as in hospital. We're talking fractures, dislocations, concussions. 30,000 a year end up in hospital through cheerleading, which is double all of the women's sports combined.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really dangerous. That's why I was bringing up the floors. Like, they have the springy floors in the proper gyms and the organized groups. But the amount of times I was watching YouTube doing the research on this, and they're doing these freaking enormous, flips and dives and stuff out on the basketball court. They hit that ground, they're screwed.
Yeah. Wow, I thought it was regulated.
No, they won't. They won't regulate it. It's not going to happen.
But what's in your heart, Evan? Is it a sport?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay, that's all right. That's all I care about.
Definitely a sport.
Oh,
Definitely a sport.
That's all right. As long as I didn't want my co-host to be sexist.
They are just straight up gymnasts.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, they are. They are. They're not protected. They're not looked after. They're risking their necks, literally.
Yes.
That's bullshit. That is absolute bullshit.
Yeah. There was a great episode of Penn and Teller's Bullshit on cheerleaders, season 8, episode 1.
Yeah.
That's a wealth of information. Yeah. Once you start looking into it, like, even to the point, varsity control, like I said, they're a monopoly. Even to the point of the show on Netflix, Cheer.
Yeah.
The 6-part.
Yep.
Where they followed.
One of them was a pedophile. Yeah. Or something. Yeah.
Where they followed a team, going to their competitions. The final routine, varsity wouldn't, because varsity own all the footage, they wouldn't allow them to show it, and they had to use iPhone footage for the final episode. Like, they wouldn't even they wouldn't even allow the footage to be used in order to promote their own freaking brand. They stomp on anything negative.
Wow.
They then changed the rules so that any competing team cannot do any press articles, TV, radio, whatever, in a negative light, or they could be disqualified.
Really?
Wow. And suddenly our show has become Last Week Tonight.
Yeah, there is this enormous dark side to cheerleading, and it'll cost any parent in America anywhere between $5,000 to $15,000 a year in fees and uniforms and attendance costs and everything else. Gym memberships, the lot. It's all varsity owned. Varsity own the gyms, they own the uniforms, they own the competitions, they own the TV rights, they own everything. And they were involved in this musical.
Of course they were.
Yeah. They even had varsity banners up in the final act. The cheerleaders that they used were sourced through varsity. And I reached out, I emailed varsity to see if they had anything to do with Bring It On the film, and they failed to respond, but I tried.
That's right. Goodness me. And well done being proactive.
Yeah, I ended up on a big rabbit hole of cheerleading.
Yeah. Goodness, no, I had no idea. Has that been on Last Week Tonight at all?
He might have done cheerleading at some point.
Yeah, because if he did, then I would have known all this and just forgotten it.
Like I said, yeah, Penn and Teller did it about 10 years ago. And the only thing that changed was the numbers have got worse in terms of injuries and, the amount of money. They were, $300 million company. They're now a $2 billion company. And at the moment, I was looking up what was happening with their antitrust lawsuits. They're still ongoing.
Yeah.
But they're currently suing ex-employees who had tried to start up their own cheerleading companies. So while fighting their own monopoly in court, they're suing their ex-employees to stop them not being a monopoly. It's insane.
Wow. Goodness me.
Yeah, definitely.
They are nuts.
I think I'm going to need to read up more on that.
Yeah, I'm totally watching this Penn and Teller episode. That sounds fabulous.
Yeah, season 8, episode 1. I think it's on HBO.
This was a perfectly fine episode, and now you bummed us all out.
Yeah, and that's not to mention the deaths every year.
Kids.
Yeah.
We're talking about kids
getting
here.
dropped on their head. It's bad.
Yeah,
and it could be avoided. I mean, it's going to happen. There's so many deaths a year through football and baseball and basketball. There's always a death here and there, but a lot of the cheerleading ones can be avoidable just by having proper trained staff and proper facilities. and they're not trying to do bloody backflips on basketball courts.
Yeah, goodness me. Like even just compensation for them for the injuries for the rest of their life, because those back injuries, neck injuries, they last. They don't go away. They affect everything in your life. I know this. I suffer from it.
There are many a teenage girl in a wheelchair for life because of cheerleading.
Friggin' hell.
So yeah, unfortunately, this musical, I think, because of Varsity's involvement, this may just be an ad for cheerleading.
Interesting viewpoint. I wonder if Lin-Manuel knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you don't know what. I couldn't find out what extent their involvement was, whether it's just, oh yeah, we'll help you find some cheerleaders, or if they actually, put some money on the table. I don't know. It's really hard to. It's not a thing you can just Google. But they were quite involved in the show. Anything that promotes cheerleading in a positive way, they're all for it.
And then they're going to be all against us now. Thank you, Evan. If we get sued, you're paying for it.
But as usual, everything's got some big evil overlord company in control of it.
Yeah, why can't it just be Disney all the time? I'm happy when it's Disney. At least then I can enjoy it.
Because they're not a big evil overlord company either.
I said, why can't it just be Disney all the time? As in, they're the evil overlord company. I'm happy for them to be the overlord company. But when it's something like this, it's just so much sinister, so much more sinister than theme parks and cartoon mice.
They've actively gone around and bought out all the competition. There used to be, 10 different organizations doing different competitions all over the country, and now there's just one.
Wow. Goodness me. Sorry to dampen your experience with this musical, Gareth. I had no idea I was going to pull that out.
I know. I'm suddenly like, I'm taking that off my iPod.
Yeah. Well, no, the musical's good. I liked it. I really did like it. I like the music. The music is great. The lyrics they're clever. They're funny. Yeah, I'd like to actually see the whole thing staged. I don't know if there's a decent bootleg or a pro shot or what. I don't know.
I'd be interested to see whether the UK production's actually any good, because you've got to find the people who can actually do all of that stuff.
Yeah, well, apparently they were helping train. The theatre kids were actually learning to do some of the cheerleading moves. But yeah, obviously not at the level of the professionals.
I was going to say, I think part of the reason that I enjoyed it so much when I saw it on Broadway was there were a lot of really, really, really good gymnasts on the stage. And actually, not being American, I'm not used to seeing cheerleader routines, every Saturday afternoon at Sheffield Wednesday game. It's not something that's part of my culture. So for me, it was a very unique experience. Again, maybe that enjoyment would not be there if I'd grown up watching football games where there's cheerleaders doing that kind of stuff all the time. Don't know. Interesting though.
Yeah. No, but I absolutely, I remember seeing Bring It On at the movies with Kristen Dunst and Eliza Dushku. Is it them two in it, or is Kristen Dunst in what's the other one? Drop Dead Gorgeous, and Gabrielle Union is in it as the leader of the other cheer squad, and Jesse Bradford. He can call me anytime.
Eliza Dushku was Faith in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, wasn't she? She was. I can imagine she would be quite good at cheerleading kind of stuff if her martial arts is anything to go by.
Yeah, no, she was good. She played that kind of same character, that tough as nails.
Oh, what about Dollhouse?
Oh yeah, and that was Dollhouse proved she could act. I mean, she could fight, but Dollhouse actually proved she could act as well because she was almost like a forerunner to Jodie Comer in Killing Eve. Her ability to switch backwards and forwards between accents and different personalities, that was it was almost a forerunner to that, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I did love that. Yes, anyways, we'll chuck to a quick ad break though, and we're back in a moment with Thrash and Treasure. G'day listeners, Aaron here. While you're topping up your coffees, did you know that you can support our show and go on a fantastically scary adventure at the same time? Go to www.thetonistonTales.com/bookstore to grab your copy of The Toniston Tales, a darkly funny Aussie trilogy about a young boy who rescues injured animals in his spare time and the roller coaster ride he's taken on by a literal fish out of water. Written by me, the village idiot of Thrash and Treasure, you'll come to love Toniston Turnbull and the dozens of wacky characters that he meets along the way. And here is a sneak peek. After barely 3 hours of light sleep, Toniston Turnbull slowly opens his eyes, his body feeling heavier than it ever has before. Not from extra weight, from tiredness and stress. Polly sighs in the shadows behind him, the flame of the nearest barbed wire tiki torch tower having died down, but not out, while Toniston napped. "Are you awake?" Toniston whispers. "Oh, how can I sleep in this place?" Polly moans, turning onto her side and facing Toniston, who stays on his back, imagining obscure animal-esque shapes in the rusted tin roof above them, shadows faintly formed by the nearest dying torches. "We need to work out a way to get out of here," Toniston states the obvious. He whispers, despite the fact the nearest shacks to their own are several meters away, and the occupants presumably asleep, as most prisoners seem to be. "How? There's no fence to squeeze through, or even climb," Polly replies, sitting up in bed and then stretching out her sore arms. The hairs stand on end from the slight chill in the air. "I don't know, but I think the whole fighting thing is a distraction." "You mean to distract the other prisoners when new ones arrive?" "No, I think that was just bad timing. Didn't you notice?" Toniston goes on to explain his theory. "That fight happened, everybody gathered around. I didn't see one person who wasn't watching, and then when I vomited, the only gate in this place closed shut." "What are you trying to say?" "I think something happened when everyone's back was turned." "Like what?" whispers Polly, her voice breaking up in fear. "I don't know. That's what we've got to find out." Toniston's brain starts working overtime. "But it's strange that nobody seems to want to leave. They seem almost happy. Definitely content. So, when's the next one of those stupid beatdowns?" Toniston can't help but think Polly looks tough, almost evil in the shadows as she asks. "I don't know," Toniston begins. But both teenagers are distracted by a crumbling noise in the distance. Hopping out of bed, Toniston joins Polly on her own, equally uncomfortable one, spotting a large, white package hovering close to the cave ceiling, behind it a shadowy figure. The package is lowered down, causing the teenagers themselves to lower as well, hoping not to be spotted by whom or what may be operating this obscure crane. Over a long, slow descent, the package is dropped to the ground. Polly keeps her eyes on it, but Toniston looks up immediately, spotting a large black shadow scurry away to God only knows where. "Come," he whispers, as he quietly hops off her bed, slipping into his docks with bare feet. Polly follows his lead. Careful to keep watch on all directions, the teenagers swiftly sneak over to the white package, their hearts beating an almost tribal jam in perfect harmony, and stopping in their tracks as the sudden realization of what lies before them sinks in. A woman, seemingly in her early 20s, wrapped up in bandages from the neck down. No, not bandages. "Is that spider web?" Polly asks, completely mortified at the prospect. Grab your copy of the Toniston Tales from thetoniston.com/bookstore today. Hooroo! Alrighty, you're listening to Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Evan, and we are joined by sound designer Gareth Owen, who has just been running right around the world, putting all these shows together, getting them back on track, literally, because obviously with COVID. Now, I have to ask this because we had a guest mention this recently. I don't even remember which guest it was, but is it true that theatres are pumping in audience cheers to trick the physical audience into cheering along?
No, I don't think that's true. Who told you that?
I can't remember. Someone on this show. I guessed.
We do occasionally use cheers. We do occasionally use applause sound effects for theatrical storytelling. I mean, if somebody, I don't know, let's say Tina Turner is performing a show on stage and there's a theatrical storytelling thing that we need to show, the applause from the audience that she's supposedly performing to is rapturous, then there's a sound effects element there that is justified. But no, certainly the implication from what you're saying is that, that people are pumping in applause sound effects at the end of songs.
I know. Oh, yeah, at the end of shows, basically, to boost that standing ovation.
No, that doesn't happen. I mean, there are some things that are done sometimes to try to trick the audience into applauding more. I mean, in its most simplistic form, if you take the cast microphones on stage and you leave them on during the applause, which obviously you have to warn the cast you're going to do that, because the last thing you want is them leaning over to the person next to them going, well, this is fucking bollocks audience in there. If you leave those microphones on, the microphones pick up the sound of the audience applauding, amplify it through the speakers, bring it back. That's a sort of more of a sort of subliminal trick.
Oh, wow.
There was a situation where I did a show for Disney in Vegas, and the auditorium was so dead that dead by dead, I mean that no echoes, no reflections, that people didn't seem to be applauding in places where you would expect them to be applauding. So we put in a sort of artificial room echo system that made the room more reverberant, that we switched on and off at appropriate moments during the show. And that makes quite a big difference, because it's always one of those things. I remember Andrew Lloyd Webber saying to me, if you're doing a song that is comedy, you can't do it too loud, because you need the audience to be able to hear each other reacting to it. Nobody wants to laugh on their own. Nobody wants to be the only person laughing. So if they hear other people laughing, they are almost licensed to laugh themselves. They feel, oh, I think this is funny, so do other people, so it's okay to laugh. But if you can't hear anyone else laughing, then you don't laugh yourself. And that then becomes sort of a perpetual spiral of, well, I'm not laughing, so no one else is laughing, so I'm not going to laugh. But then no one else laughs, so no one else laughs, so no one else laughs, etc., etc. So there are various tricks you can do, like actually making comedy songs quieter so that you can hear people. Actually, not having a completely dead space, like a recording studio is the perfect sound environment, because there's very minimal reflections, minimal echo, that kind of stuff. Actually, that's not necessarily a good thing. For storytelling, it might be good from the sound point of view, but it's not necessarily good from storytelling point of view.
I think it was Hadley.
Tim Hadley said that.
Hadley Fraser.
Oh, Hadley Fraser.
I actually thought it was Ali McGregor.
Oh, yeah. Could have been her. Oh, one of them. It was one of the guests. I don't know. We've had that many.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm saying I've never done that for the deliberate purpose of inciting audience applause. To be honest, I think if you've got a show where you need to pipe in applause to get people to applaud, it's probably not long for this world. You're probably better off moving on to the next one.
I think that also applies to producers getting people to stand up at the end of shows to entice everyone behind them to stand up as well. Stop doing that shit.
Yeah, we all know there's two different sorts of standing ovation. There's a type of standing ovation where everyone stands up. And then there's a type of standing ovation where someone in front of you stands up and suddenly you can't see the stage anymore. So you sort of feel like, oh, I suppose if they're going to stand up, I kind of now have to stand up. And you sort of see it rippling back through the auditorium. And then there's the sort of guilty standing ovation where enough people stand up that you kind of feel, oh, I can't be the person who doesn't stand up now, can I? So I guess I'm going to have to stand up as well. And then there's the kind of standing ovations like the end of Come From Away, or the end of Tracy Bennett's performance of End of the Rainbow on Broadway, where the lights go down and bang, every member of the audience is on their feet in half a second. That's a real standing ovation, and you can tell the difference once you get used to watching shows.
Yeah, no, we've actually asked a lot about the standing ovation in terms of, do people think it's lost their meaning over the years?
I really do. I feel like almost every show. In fact, to be honest, I actually feel like I can't really remember the last time I did a show where it didn't get a standing ovation. It's just, I guess I've been lucky and I've done quite a lot of hit shows, but at the same time, I just think it's become a thing, and as a result, it doesn't really mean anything. You can, as I say, you can still tell the difference between a real one and, it's the end of the show, we should stand up and applaud. But I'm hard pushed to remember. It's not many shows these days that don't. Yeah, it has lost its meaning, I think. I mean, it's an interesting discussion to say, are musical theatre shows deliberately manipulating the audience to applaud. Well, I'm more interested in the idea of that being put across as a bad thing, because at the end of the day, people applaud because they're enjoying themselves. And I don't believe that I don't believe it's like the old days of the movies where they used to put in one frame in 24 that said applaud, that tricks people into, people are applauding and cheering and laughing and crying at good shows because the show has made them do that. Now, there are no end of psychological tricks that you can use to encourage people to do that. But those are the same psychological tricks that Elvis would have used to make a great song. It's just part of art. It's did Van Gogh think about I'm going to make people stop and stare with this particular picture of a freaking sunflower? Yeah, but there's no end of things about it that trick the mind into making you go, Jesus. That's amazing, and that's art, isn't it? I mean, it's not. I would hope it's not quite so deliberately cynical as, okay, here's 50 ways of making an audience laugh, cheer, and cry. Let's make sure we tick every single box in the construction of our new musical. I'd hope it's not that cynical, but that's part of the art of creating art, isn't it? Manipulating the people who are viewing or hearing that art into having a good time, into enjoying what it is you've created.
Yes, I edit every episode to sound literate.
You can really dig into it from a sound engineering point of view as well. I mean, no singer sounds like they sound in a musical theatre show if they're singing in your front room. They just don't. There's thousands of tricks that every studio engineer, every live sound engineer is using to make performances sound as good as possible. I was having a discussion with a drummer the other day who said, well, the drums don't sound the way the drums sound. And I was like, no, they don't. No recording of drums in history sounds like drums sound. This idea that a kick drum hits you in the chest, that a kick drum goes boom, 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 that's not how a kick drum sounds. That is how sound engineers for decades have made kick drums sound. That's how the public perceives kick drum to sound. But it's not how kick drums actually sound if you stand in a room with a drum kit. That's not what they sound like. We were discussing the fact, he said, well, all the toms are the same volume. They go, you've made it so all 4 toms, dum, 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 all the same volume. I said, yeah. He said, but that's not how it is. I'm like, and he's right. One is a much bigger drum than another. They make different volumes. They're not even in volume. But yet sound engineers for decades have taken toms and evened the sound of them. No audience member wants to hear the third tom is way louder than the first tom, because that's not what we do. Yeah. And, you take singers. Singers don't sound like that. We use all sorts of techniques. We use compression, we use expansion, we use reverb, we use auto-tune. Everyone talks about auto-tune. Oh my God, we use auto-tune. Like comparing it in a negative way to Photoshop or, that kind of stuff. Auto-tune is just about, we actually generally don't use auto-tune live. It's quite hard to use auto-tune live. But every studio recording is auto-tuned to some degree. And even if it isn't, every studio, you don't hear a single take of a vocal on any album you've ever heard. They'll do 15 different takes of the same thing, and then they'll do what's called comping, where they take all the best bits and they chop it together and go, you know what, line 3 of the second take is better than line 3 of the fourth take, so we'll just chop that out, swap it in. It's like building a puzzle. It's like your t-shirt. It's like building a jigsaw out of all of the best bits and creating an end result. There's a lot of manipulation, sonically and otherwise, that goes into all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, apparently that was one of the big pain in the ass of recording Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 was Axel wanted to do it line by line. And it just took weeks and weeks and weeks.
So, he's a perfectionist.
Yes, you big perfectionist. I do actually have a nerdy technical question that has been bugging me for years.
Okay.
You've done, mixing in big stadium shows. I'm not sure how big.
Big.
But thinking something like Wembley, right?
Yeah, I've mixed in Wembley.
So you're, Wembley, 30, 40, 60,000 people. Now, the speed of signal is way faster than the speed of sound. How do you account for that delay when the people up the back are a second and a half out from the people up the front? Is anything done, or they just go, oh, well, that's physics?
So when it comes to the sound, all of the speakers in a stadium, all the speakers in an auditorium, even in a theatre, are all time aligned. So if you have a speaker at the front at the stage, and then you have what we call delay towers, and the clue is in the title. We have these delay towers that are further down the auditorium, where we have second sets of speakers. Those delay towers have a artificial electronic delay timer added to them to compensate for the speed of sound, 330 feet a second, that the amount of time that it takes for the sound to travel from the stage, from the speakers at the stage, to the next set of speakers. Otherwise, you just get horrible echoes. You sometimes hear it at train stations where you hear the train hit coming from loads of different places. So we use electronic delay lines to time align those speakers up through the auditorium and up through the stadiums. And it's obviously a much bigger problem in stadiums than it is in theatres, but it's a remarkably big problem in theatres as well. More than enough for your brain to absolutely recognise it and go, what is going on? This is impossible to listen to. So that's how it's done. That's how the audio side of it. But when it comes to the visual side of it, there is no such thing as a sonic accelerator. You can't accelerate sound. So when you have the big video screens either side of the stage, and you're at the back of the auditorium, and you watch, and they zoom in on the drummer, and you see the drummer hitting the snare, it's nothing like in time alignment, because the sound has to be aligned to the stage, which means you have to delay everything as you go back to the auditorium. So sound is traveling much, much, much slower than light is traveling. Speed of sound, speed of light, two totally different things, which is why the further away you get from the stage, the more out of time the sound is with the giant video screens that you see outside the stage. And there's no way of beating that. There's no such thing as a sonic accelerator that can make the sound and the video line up. It's just not possible.
I have no idea about any of that.
So would that mean that before you could delay, before you could align speakers by time, before that technology came along, did that mean that big events like that just weren't possible? Or they just made all the noise at one end and then just hope you could hear it up the back? So
what we try to do now is that we try to get as even as possible space through the volume through the stadium, through the theatres, and we do that by, rather than having one insanely huge pile of speakers at the front of the stage and turning them up really, really loud so the sound gets to the back, we have smaller speakers at the front that we turn up to X volume. Then we have another set of speakers further down the room that we turn up, and then we have another set of speakers that we turn up. And that way you can have 3 sets of speakers running at a lower volume, or 10 sets of speakers running at a lower volume, and still get the level to the back of the auditorium. But of course you couldn't do that until the digital delay lines came along. And that's why you go back to Grateful Dead and their wall of sound. These absolutely insane sized speaker systems that must have been crushingly loud for the people at the front, but were probably way too quiet for the people at the back, because sound is absorbed by air. Air absorbs sound, air attenuates sound. So as sound travels through the air, it gets quieter and quieter and quieter. And the further away you get from the stage, the quieter it gets. That must have been, that was the old way of doing it before the digital delay lines came along.
There we go.
An interesting trick on it is that the very, very first way that people experimented with doing it before digital delay lines came along was that they used 2 reel-to-reel tape recorders, and they put them next to each other, and they put a loop of tape between the 2 tape recorders, and then they recorded the sound onto the tape from one machine and played the sound back from the tape on the second machine.
That's clever.
And then by moving the two tape recorders apart from each other, you could get the course distance, the course delay time. And then by changing the speed of the tape recorders, you could get the fine adjustment. So you'd have these two giant tape machines with a loop of tapes zooming around between them. That was how you could. And that is why sound engineers still refer today to a type of delay called tape echo,
Right.
which is where the term tape echo came from, because it was actually tape echo.
That is full on MacGyvering it. That is brilliant. Yeah, that's clever.
Yeah.
That's very clever.
Some very clever person thought of that. Are you still awake, Aaron?
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at my questions just to make sure that you haven't answered anything.
No, I wanted to know that the answer to that question for so many years. Ever since I went to a big, a big show, and I know that there's a, what's being heard up there is not what's being heard back here. I was like, how the hell do you figure that out?
Yeah, and the average person doesn't think of it.
Yeah, but no, I'm finally asked the right person.
Oh, there you go. Now you can finally move on with your life.
Yeah, and how many roadies have been slapped upside their head for not coiling leads properly?
Oh, it's when you see people wrapping it around their elbows. You're like, oh my god!
Oh, that just drives me nuts.
Oh my god! First gig, is it? Is it? Oh dear, this is awkward. Right, you can stop that right now.
Again, going back, I did play drums in a cover band
Plug.
many years ago, and that was one of the first things my guitarist taught me was how to coil his leads properly.
Love it.
Now, what theatre would you say has the best acoustics?
Depends what your definition of best acoustics is. I mean,
I have no idea what it even means, Gareth.
Well, I mean, if you look at something like the Gillian Lynn in London, which we basically redid all of the acoustics to make it into a completely adjustable, almost recording studio type sound. As a sound engineer, I could argue that that's the best acoustics. But I just love theatres like the Palladium in London. That has fabulous acoustics. And to be honest, it's one of my favourite theatres in the whole world. And then there's places like the Dominion in London, which has truly awful acoustics, and you spend most of your day just fighting the acoustics rather than actually trying to make anything sound good. And then, of course, as every stadium I've ever worked in, as Evan correctly points out, stadiums are designed to naturally amplify the sound of crowds cheering. They're designed to echo the sound of this guy cheering for this football team. It's designed to amplify the sound, and it is a really, really bad place to be trying to do amplified sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I personally wouldn't see a concert like at the MCG or anything. And I know wasn't there a concert recently or something, no, it was a boxing match. That's right. And people had floor seats on the MCG. You've been to Melbourne, obviously, we've come from away, and you would have seen the MCG and how big that is. Could you imagine a boxing match in the center of the MCG and in the field covered with seats? People complained that they couldn't see the ring. What were you expecting, you friggin' morons, for crying out loud? That's the Melbourne Cricket Ground. It is like 150 meters wide.
Yeah. It's not going to be a big surprise, that, is it?
No, but of course people complained, didn't they? Because they're fucking morons.
But it was like seeing we saw Queen just before COVID at Perth Arena. And just that background crowd noise really was deafening, just overlaying the whole thing. It was just
crowds are annoying.
Well, I mean, the whole original development of new speaker systems was pushed forward heavily by the Beatles in that famous Shea Stadium concert. No one heard a word. I mean, not a word. No one heard anything except Screaming Girls. No one heard what Beatles, and that single note the Beatles played. And the Beatles were like, this is pointless. It's absolutely no point to doing this. We might as well just stand up here and wave. They couldn't hear themselves. No one could hear them. It was just Screaming Girls. And the Beatles kind of went, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore until someone sorts out. Until someone starts developing speaker systems that are actually capable of delivering sound in a way that actually can overpower this screaming hysteria.
Now, do you do much Foley?
When it comes to sound effects and that kind of stuff, we don't really do Foley at all in shows, although for Hunchback, we had this idea that because Hunchback of Notre Dame for Disney, we had this idea that because it was presented as a team of players on the stage presenting the story of Hunchback, we would also try to have them create all the sound effects. So, for example, we had a wind machine on stage. It was one of those ideas. It seemed like a good idea, but as we went through the production, we were embellishing it with more and more recorded sound effects and that kind of stuff. But in terms of Foley, no, I have a incredibly geeky, incredibly elaborate sound effects library that I pull almost everything I need out of. I know that there are sound designers who record every new sound effect from scratch, and I'm just not really that guy. I can electronically manipulate the ingredients from my sound effects library into almost anything I want it to be.
Yeah,
that's how I tend to do it.
Oh, I'm so obsessed with Foley. It just looks so much fun.
Oh, it's great
just
fun
to be in a room filled of random shit and be like, we're going to make rain with rice.
Well, that's what's so fascinating about it. So many of the sounds that you think you know what they are turn out to be something completely different. Breaking bones is actually somebody breaking sticks of celery.
Yeah. Running is hitting leather and stuff like that.
Yeah, all of the classic sounds that you think you know sound absolutely nothing. A punch is, taking a cabbage and slamming it into it. I don't know if you've ever stood next to someone when they actually get punched. It doesn't sound anything like you've been taught it does. Same with door slams. Door slams don't sound anything like how we perceive them to be. Another great. I mean, there's no end of idiosyncrasies when it comes to Foley, particularly in movies. I don't know. I mean, I assume you guys both drive cars, right?
No.
Yes.
You see how erratic I am here? That's what I'd be like behind the wheel. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, next time you're anywhere near cars, just notice how many of them screech their wheels when they pull away.
Oh, not at all.
And next time you're watching any TV or movie, watch how pretty much every time a car pulls away, its wheels screech. Horses is another great example. My mum had horses when I was a kid. I can name the number of times, I can count the number of times I heard her horse neigh on one hand. But yet every horse in every movie neighs all the time. Walk up to it, go, neigh. Pat it on its nose, neigh. Horses don't neigh, very, very rarely. And car wheels don't screech either.
Yeah, car tires that screech on dirt roads is one of my pet peeves in film.
That's a great one. I'm impressed. How do you do that?
It shits me off. How is that even possible? Your brain just won't accept it.
But on the other hand, I watched the 9th installment of Fast and the Furious the other day.
Oh, you poor thing.
And which was beyond bonkers. And yes, I was annoyed by how the tires screeched on dirt roads, but I was considerably more disturbed by the idiosyncrasies in the way electromagnets work. That was probably the biggest takeaway I took from that, is the selective use of electromagnets that can grab some things but not others.
I thought you were going to say gear change.
Well, actually, I thoroughly enjoyed it because it was just stupid. Gear change is a good one, though. Well, yeah, I mean, racing, as a Formula One fan, any racing movie where they seem to be able to downshift and then overtake anything never ceases to amaze me. If it was that simple, wouldn't they be doing it in races? Oh, look, you come up behind a car and you want to get past it, you just downshift and go round. Brilliant, fabulous. Oh, that's how it works.
Yeah. Well, my father was always annoyed at the amount. Apparently, they can just lose track of how many gears they have, and they can just keep changing up.
Because every time you change up, it adds excitement. It's like changing key in a musical. Just keep going up.
He's watching a film and he's like, he's in 12th gear by now. I swear.
How many bullets does that gun have? Machine guns that can shoot forever. Most a standard machine gun at a full pelt goes for 1.5 seconds before it's out of bullets. Not in a Fast and the Furious movie.
I was really enjoying Shang-Chi all the way through that movie, and then the civilian character, Awkwafina's Katie character, shot an arrow through the dragon, maybe 5 friggin' miles up in the air or 5 kilometers up in the air. There's no way in hell did she shoot that arrow. The rest of the film, I was all in.
Did you go to the toilet during the training montage?
she was really bad during the training montage. In fact, that
She got the hang of it.
no, she didn't. Barely. The advice given to her was don't die. It wasn't don't shoot a fucking arrow to the moon. And that's what she almost did. So I was through all that movie.
So just so I'm clear, the bit that caused you to suspend your failure of suspense of disbelief in that movie was how far she could shoot an arrow.
Was a civilian character, not a superhero. See, if it was one of the
Literally anyone else.
Shang-Chi and his sister, if they had done it, I totally would have bought into it because they're super powered characters anyways. So they're going to do ridiculous things like they were doing. But the civilian character, I just didn't buy it. I'm like, no way, she's tiny. There's no way in hell that was so far up in the air. I was through that whole movie. I was with every silly bit. I was totally in for it.
This sounds like every argument I ever have with my wife when we're watching sci-fi. We'll be watching like Walking Dead, and I'll be like, "Well, there's absolutely no way he could jump across that. It's just so unrealistic." And she'll be like, "Dude, he's being chased by 600 zombies with flamethrowers. How is that the bit that spoils it for you?"
Because things can be over the top, but done in a way that is plausible, or that you at least you buy into that fantasy of it. But once something like the civilian does something extraordinary out of nowhere, if there was a lead up, that would be fine. Anyways, it's not about this, but we won't keep you much longer because you have had a busy week and a busy couple of months. But so speaking of which, what advice do you have for keeping up your stamina for such long hours at the sound desk? So what things do you do to make sure you're not passing out?
Sounds like you want a sensible answer.
Welcome to Thrash and Treasure.
Oh, no, okay, I'll give you a sensible answer.
No.
I try to exercise whenever possible. I try to get outside whenever possible, and I try not to do the thing that is so prevalent in theatre, where you work through all your breaks and work through all your dinner. And I try to make sure I get breaks because it becomes much more constructive. You know, if you go outside and go for a walk, or you go outside and eat some food, then your next session in theatre will be more constructive than it would have been if you just powered through.
Yeah. Have you been in a theatre overnight by yourself?
I've done a lot of late night calls, never on my own. They're never stupid enough to leave me alone in the theatre.
Yeah, well, I did when I was a kid making my film, and then I let everyone in and locked the keys inside, so they didn't let me stay there on my own again. But it was terrifying. It was, because theaters, there's no one around. No one died in that theater, but I swear to God, I was not alone.
I can imagine a theatre will be pretty spooky on your own. I mean, most of the time when I stay late, it's because we're standing there, we're still working on chunks of music, and the last thing I think anyone's worried about is ghosts.
Yeah,
we're worried about our own survival, but we're not worried about ghosts.
No, I was more worried about a serial killer, I think, because I was in my teen slasher phase at the time. But lastly, what's one long-running show that you would like to redesign sound-wise, which is no disrespect to the original creatives, just purely for your own creative impulses? Wicked, yeah. What would you do differently with it?
I think Wicked is of a time when it was still considered important to be quiet. And I've always felt the score of Wicked just deserves to soar. And it was created at a time when that was not what people thought musical theatre shows should sound like. And yeah, I'd like to take Wicked, I'd like to take that score and do it again, but louder.
Yeah, I'd like to see it again, but warmer, I think. I found it quite cold, quite structured, which is very disappointing. Like, I'd waited a long time to see that show.
I mean, I remember when I saw Wicked, I remember thinking, I saw it with Adina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, and I remember sitting there thinking, this is all fine, but actually, what I feel like I really want is these two girls sitting on a stool with the orchestra and just singing the songs. Because everything else going around it, I'm not hugely bothered by that. I'm ambivalent to that. But these songs, these orchestrations, this orchestra, these singers, this is fabulous. And I could leave everything else going on around it. Having said that, it's one of the most popular, and maybe if not almost the certainly the top 3 most popular musicals ever. So clearly goes to show plenty of other people enamored enough with the story to watch it.
Yeah, exactly. So us people who know what we're talking about, we can go get stuffed.
Exactly.
But yes, no, anyways, thank you so much for joining us on this trashy show. As you see, you were hanging out with Bon Jovi the other day.
Oh, it's thoroughly entertaining.
And now you're hanging out with bloody Beavis and Butthead over here. That's me. I'm Beavis, by the way.
That makes me the guy with the Nelson t-shirt on.
Yes. But anyway, so where can people find you on the social medias?
At Gareth Owen Sound on pretty much every platform.
Yep. Awesome. And you've got obviously MJ's opening soon. What else is in the pipeline? Because obviously this is a weird time of all the shows reopening at once. Fresh and...
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, it's all pretty hectic getting existing shows open and shows that we're planning pre-pandemic. So, yeah, we're kind of just concentrating on that at the moment. Then the early part of next year, I'm taking a bit of time off to be at home with the family. And then from summer next year, we start on what actually is a lot of remounts. It's a lot of taking new shows that we created in places like the West End and bringing them to Broadway. So, for example, Cinderella for Andrew Lloyd Webber and Juliet, Back to the Future are all destined for Broadway. Bat Out of Hell is destined for Vegas. Mamma Mia the Party also for Vegas, etc., etc. So, there's, I feel like next year, I'm sure we'll be doing some new stuff, but it feels like next year is a lot of taking existing shows out to different parts of the world.
Yep, awesome. And look forward to the bringing Cinderella to Melbourne. Premiere in Melbourne, not Sydney. I have requested it already from David Zippel.
Excellent.
Anyways, that's it from us. You at home, take care, and we shall see you next time. Hooroo!
Thanks very much.
Like Quicksand!